Thank goodness for App State. It's Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Dave Schultz with another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Thanks so much for tuning in. Today's episode brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedon and use code LOCKEDON for a first deposit match of up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, we will go over the bowl games in the order that they were played. We'll preview ODU and WKU coming up today in the famous Toastery Bowl. And we'll talk about the Cajuns falling at McNeese. As someone who went to both Cajuns games, I know the Cajuns fell in both games, but both the football game and the basketball game were wildly entertaining. The basketball game absolutely lived up to its billing. All right, let's first talk about the Ohio and Georgia Southern ball game, the Myrtle Beach Bowl. And I'm sorry, Georgia Southern has no excuses. They played well in the second half, but they just laid a complete and total egg and flat out embarrassed themselves. Ohio was playing with a bunch of backups. Backup quarterback, backup running back, backup wide receiver, and backup linebacker. And this was 20-0 in the first half. Davis Brin kept on throwing interception after interception after interception. And we sort of, not sort of, we let him off the hook. He 19 interceptions this year, right? And we let him off the hook earlier because he had that 5 interception game against Wisconsin, right? And then, or 4, hold on. It was 5 interception game against Wisconsin. And then he didn't throw any for a couple weeks. And then he threw 2 against JMU, threw 2 more against ULM, 1 against Georgia State, 1 against Texas State, and then didn't have any against Marshall in a loss. None against ODU, but then he threw 3 against App State, but that was a big loss, so it could have been early on. Or it could have been later on when it got out of control. But you cannot have the kind of game that Georgia Southern just did, right? We went into it saying, A, all the backups are playing for Ohio, and B, Georgia Southern needs to get off the schneid. This was a team that was competing for the Sun Belt East. They rebounded nicely from a bad loss to JMU, then beats Monroe, beats Georgia State, and now have lost 5 straight. They finished the season 6-7. They were 6-2, 3-1 in the Sun Belt. And they just, as far as I'm concerned, they no-showed. Now, they did show up in the second half. All right. And actually, it got to be a 2-score game where there was time for them to win the ball game 35-34. They had the ball, I think it was like about 9 minutes left. Let's see how much time there was left. They had the ball down 34-31 with 12 minutes left. Well, I'll rephrase that. Hold on. No. With 9 minutes left. 9 minutes left. So you can actually score, get a stop, and score again. That's not a whole lot. So, but they didn't, obviously. And Ohio eventually put the ball game away with another score. But that's just a bad job by Georgia Southern. They just no-showed. They just no-showed. And that is inexplicable. Don't go if you don't want to play. Don't go. I mean, I understand the other team's trying, and obviously the backups want to play as hard as they can, but that's just, as far as I'm concerned, that's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And Georgia Southern should be embarrassed the way they played. All right. I appreciate the kind of season that they had. It started out so well, but fell apart, and you just can't turn the ball over. You just can't turn the ball over. So that did not go Georgia Southern's way. All right. So the Sun Belt off to a bad start. Now, what was a wildly entertaining ball game was Jacksonville State taking on the Cajuns 34-31. This is one of those games where it's tough to explain. All right. Jacksonville State outgained the Cajuns 526-247. That should be like a 45-3 ball game in favor of Jackson State. 2-1. Okay. The problem is that Jacksonville State turned the ball over 4 times, and the Cajuns got 3 scores out of them. And so their first 2 scores in the game were defensive scores. And Jacksonville State's going to take the lead in the 4th quarter, and the Cajuns return another interception for a touchdown. And the thing was, the Cajuns actually got to stop. They couldn't run a 4-minute offense and get a first down. Jacksonville State goes down and scores a tying touchdown. Cajuns miss a field goal in overtime, and Jacksonville State basically grinded out a field goal. All right, few things in this ballgame. All right. Cajuns defense, it's an odd thing, right? They gave up 526 yards, but had 4 turnovers and 3 defensive scores. I thought the Cajuns defense actually played pretty well. It's kind of odd to say that, I know. They made some stops. They got some sacks when they needed to. I thought Jacksonville State did a pretty good job bringing Smothers in. Logan Smothers came in and relieved Zion Webb. Zion had struggles passing the football. He's a really good athlete, but he had some struggles throwing the ball. I mean, I thought the first 2 touchdowns were really lucky. One was tipped and caught, which could have been intercepted or just fall to the ground. And another one, a defensive back for the Cajuns, mistimed his jump. Good catch by the wide receiver, but a little bit lucky. The problem was the Cajuns, couple of interesting play calls. Cajuns were inside the 10-yard line, I think, and settled for a field goal when they probably should have been getting a touchdown. And unfortunately, they passed it on 2nd and 1 and 2nd and 3rd and 1. And then they kick a field goal on 4th and 1. Not the best of all play selection. All right. Then they come out in overtime and run a wide receiver end around pass that Jacksonville State defended well. Mike Desmos said it was not executed properly. I would say it was probably defended pretty well. And he said after the game, if that's a touchdown, he's like, hindsight 2020. If it's a touchdown, everybody loves it, but it didn't work, so it looks bad. But out of all the plays, those are the 3 main complaints, right? They probably should have run the ball on 2nd and 3rd and 1, and an interesting play call to start overtime. But this was a game where the Cajuns absolutely could have won, if not should have won, and yet they could have been blown out at the same time. It's amazing, right? You can complain about, well, the defense gave up 526 yards, but they forced 4 touchdowns and scored 3 times. So there are Cajuns fans that are bothered by this. They're not taking into consideration maybe the top 5 Cajun players weren't playing. They're down to the 3rd-string quarterback, 3rd-string center. Top running back wasn't playing. Top outside linebacker or end rusher wasn't playing. Well, 2 quarterbacks weren't playing, right? Ben Woldridge and Zeon Chris, Jacob Cabote, Landon Burton, the center, and Tyler Guidry, all not playing. If you want to see what bad coaching looks like, go watch the Chargers and Raiders. That was bad coaching. That's what happens when the coach loses the team. This game went to overtime. Dylan from the Fun Belt podcast thought this game was good. They were going to be rolled on. I wasn't sure what was going to happen, although I think I picked the Cajuns. I thought the Cajuns did a pretty good job actually kind of quelling the running game. They made some good adjustments. They got off the field a couple of times. And also, I would give credit to a couple of nice plays that Jacksonville State made. There was a fake handoff, like a fake throw to the left and hit the tight end down the seam. That's a nice play, right? That's a nice play. Logan Smothers came in and ran a QB draw, 3rd and 8. It's a nice play. It's a good job, right? You got to tip the cap to the other team sometime. Let's see what happens. And I'm going to go on Ragin review with them later today. Let's see what happens if this team stays healthy. Now, you got to bring the whole team back, or most of it as you can. Kendry Gant already has committed to Houston, so you can't blame him for leaving. But see if they bring Zeon Chris back and Draylon Washington back and Zylan Perry back and Bill Davis back and Robert Williams back and Harvey Broussard back and, the talented but young secondary back. this team could be special. All right. I think this team could be special. Last 2 years, they've played 3 quarterbacks each season. So those are not excuses. Those are reasons. And it was a wildly entertaining ball game. I'm not sure if you need to make, are we making wholesale changes if they win 34-31, but now we have to make wholesale changes on the coaching staff if they lose 34-31? Come on. I don't happen to think so. I thought it was a great game. Could have won, maybe should have won, and at the same time could have gotten blown out. It's crazy. That's nuts. All right, quickly to App State and Miami of Ohio. Honestly, did not see much of this game in a rainstorm and a ton of turnovers. Thank goodness for App State defending the Sun Belt shield, if you will. They defeat Miami of Ohio 13-9. 6 combined turnovers in the driving rain. Miami had 3 fumbles. App State had 2 fumbles. And Joy Aguilar with an interception. So on ESPN.com, you go to the box score. Game leaders from Miami, Ohio. Maddox Kopp was the passing leader. 1 for 2 for 28 yards. Yeesh. Henry Hessen, 5 of 8 for 16 yards. Aguilar, 18 of 32, 211 yards and a touchdown, or interception, rather. Anderson Castle getting the shot with no Nate Noel, 20 carries and 119 yards. And Caden Robinson, actually 8 catches for 118 yards in the driving rain. So good job by App State. It was a interesting season for App State, kind of up and down, and then they reeled off 5 in a row. And they lose in the Sun Belt Championship game. The score was a blowout. It got away from them late, but I mean, it was 21-17, and then you had the fumble, and then they couldn't stop Kamani. So, congratulations to Sean Clark and the Mountaineers. Really good job by them. That the Sun Belt deserves a lot of praise for putting 12 teams in bowl games. They're going to deserve some flack for coming up short in some of these games. They are. All right. And they deserve it. When you no-show, as Georgia Southern did, they deserve some grief. Okay. When you battle for like the Cajuns did, I'm not sure how much grief you deserve. Cajun fans think they should win every ball game. They should be undefeated every single game. That's it is. It's what it is around here. What can you do? But so good job for App State to battle. All right, when we come back, we will preview the famous Toastery Bowl, which I found is a breakfast place in Charlotte or in North Carolina. It is ODU versus Western Kentucky. Again, the Sun Belt team will play a bunch of backups. We'll see if that's going to matter. Let me tell you about eBay Motors. Well, that worked. All right. A little new graphic. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. That's ebaymotors.com. All right, Dave Schultz. Mistimed it. Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. We'll get to the Cajuns falling to McNeese at the end. But let's talk a little ODU and WKU in the famous Toastery Bowl coming up later today. It is a 2:30 Eastern start, 1:30 Central time. Second year in a row, Western Kentucky is playing a Sun Belt team in the bowl game. They did a number on South Alabama last year. They aren't quite as good this year as they were last year, but they are missing quite a number of people. Austin Reed being the main one, the quarterback, who we thought wasn't going to play against South Alabama, got a little NIL deal, came back to play the bowl game and returned to Western Kentucky. Also, Malachi Corley, the wide receiver, is out. Visson also reporting that they're missing 60% of their offensive line. Quantavious Leslie, Vincent Murphy, and Wes Dorsey. Leslie was the left guard, Vincent Murphy the center, and Wes Dorsey the right tackle. All are out. They're also losing cornerback Epton Stout, Desmond Baker, a linebacker, and Talik Allen. Oh, my God. That's a lot. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 starters out of 22. Jeez. Old Dominion will be Old Dominion will be down in receiver as well. Javon Harvey is out, and as is defensive back Terry Jones. But we're going to think that ODU is going to show up and show out in this one. That's my guess. All right. We saw them. I don't know if you saw pictures. The Pelicans played in Charlotte on Friday night, and the Monarchs were there. They got a nice picture with Larry Nance Jr. So that was pretty cool. So we'll see if Ricky Ronnie, again, this team, I'm pretty sure the over-under was like 1.5. Like that's how many wins they were supposed to get, and they could end up with 7. And that's a good thing going forward. All right. So we'll watch for ODU could possibly and hopefully tie this Sun Belt record up through 4 games. They need it badly. All right. I mean, the 2 best teams hopefully will win, but they're doing it without their coaches. And I think Jordan McLeod's playing in the bowl game, right, for JMU, but there's still no Kurt Signetti there and no John Summerall for Troy. So we'll see how that goes for those 2 teams. All right, let's take one more time out. When we come back, Cajuns and McNeese played a whale of a basketball game. It lived up to the billing. Marlin versus Way 2, and Willie the Kid is leading the way. It was quite the show. We will do that when we come back right after this. Again, special thanks to everybody who subscribed. We're up over 1,030 subscribers. Maybe with the YouTube algorithms, it's getting more out there with after 1,000 subscribers. Really do appreciate it. It means a lot. It's not the easiest time right now for me, and I'm going to take advantage of that. Going to hit the road for a little bit, but we'll still be doing the podcast. So thank you so much. Please tell all your friends and family about Sunbelt on YouTube, Locked On Sunbelt on YouTube. Have them subscribe. Can you imagine? We just got 100 fans per school. That's 1,400. And so you could easily find me getting, to 2,000 or 3,000 as maybe by next football season. But that's a long-term goal down the road. I do sincerely appreciate all the support up till now, getting it over 1,000. And don't forget about the audio podcast. You can get those anywhere you find your audio podcast. Locked On Sunbelt. Popular ones are Apple Podcasts and Spotify, obviously. All right, let's continue. All right, we were talking about this ball game a lot last week. Ragin' Cajuns basketball team taking on McNeese. McNeese is pretty good. McNeese is 9-2 heading into this ball game. Cajuns, I think the Cajuns were coming off a nice. Thought the Cajuns were coming off a nice win on. They beat Eastern Kentucky pretty well, I thought. This past Wednesday. And I would tell you, though, I thought the Cajuns played, they beat Eastern Kentucky 73-62. Honestly, McNeese was like a 5.5, 6-point favorite, and I would have thought McNeese was going to roll. I thought that. All right. I think the Cajuns have issues inside, and if they're not hitting threes, they struggle. Well, this ball game had it all. All right. Cajuns come out. Both teams actually came out pretty quick. And then Then the defense started showing up, and the offense got a little sloppy. Cajuns were down 19-13, made it 19-15, and then all of a sudden held McNeese for a minute, scoreless drought. Well, McNeese did the same thing to the Cajuns. But the Cajuns ended up taking like a 23-20 lead. Garnett had 4 or 5 in the first half from the Kentrell Garnett from three-point land. So he led them there. And it was a 23-20 ball game at half. No, I'm sorry. It's the 33-28 ball game at half. Yeah, I don't know why I said 23-20. 33-28 ball game at half. And McNeese ends up getting a couple quick buckets and a couple of quick fouls. Cajuns may have been at 16 fouls before the first time out. Yeah, it got fast. In the first half again, the defense took over for a bit. Offenses were sloppy, but that had to do with the defense. And then the Cajuns all of a sudden kind of methodically built a lead. They had like a 45-40 lead, and then it broke out. There was a scrum on the court. There was a loose ball, and it was almost like a football. No one could hang on to it. And right in front of the Cajuns bench, McNeese finally calls timeout, and they give him a timeout. All right. Well, the McNeese player was like, I threw the ball off of one of the Cajuns players, and I ended up hitting him in the head. It was hold on a second. It was Shoemate did it. Christian Shoemate. He's like, I hit the player in the head with the ball, just trying to put it out of bounds. And apparently one of the coaches said something. None of the Cajuns players did anything. Remember, this is right in front of the Cajuns bench. The problem was a few McNeese players came over. Nothing really happened. I would tell you the one player that started yapping was CJ Felder, and I think he was ineligible until like yesterday. So he was a little bit more amped up than others. And he started yapping, and maybe that's what got the other players to come over. But the Cajuns ended up, and the referees got this right. Very rarely does this happen, right? They got it right. They got 2 technicals on players. Could have been more. But then they gave Will Wade a technical, who was probably just standing up for one of his players. And the Cajuns got 6 free throws and the ball. Kentrell makes 5 of 6, missed the first one, then rattled 5 straight home. And then they hit a 3. And then they may have hit, did they hit another 3? They were rolling in this ballgame. And it absolutely got away from them as the crowd got in the ballgame. The Cajuns' biggest lead, 13, was 13. Blake Butler, this is where the game changed. Blake Butler hit a three-pointer, make it 55-42. And he started talking smack to the crowd. So there's a good chance that the guy in the crowd said something to the player. Just saying. So Blake Butler turned around and said something back and was whistled for a technical. I don't think I've ever seen that. So we're going to be paying attention all season long to when a player talks smack back to the crowd that they call a technical. You never hear that. You never see that. All right, so that was one technical back to the Cowboys. Later on in the game, Hosanna Contingi blocks a shot, and he gives this kind of signal back to the Cajuns bench. Now, it's across the floor, but he's not. No McNeese players in front of him. He's looking at the Cajuns bench, goes, nope. Kind of like a Mutombo wagging his finger type of deal. Technical foul on him. So now we're going to be seeing throughout the year if those are technical fouls, because you can tell me that the referees were just trying to keep control, and all of a sudden there are a lot of touch fouls. I thought both ways. I thought the Cajuns got fouled a couple of times, and I didn't think it was. And then they called some ticky-tack fouls against the Cajuns. But those 2 gift technicals got the Cowboys back into the ballgame. Although, I will say, they The free throws, they shot 8 more free throws than the Cajuns, but they missed 9 free throws. I mean, McNeese was 19 of 28, and the Cajuns were 17 of 20. So they scored, I mean, they won by 2, and they made 2 more free throws. Okay. But the game got away from the Cajuns because up 55-42, they wouldn't call timeout. They did not call timeout until they were trailing 61-59. I don't get it. I make fun of Bob Marlin all the time because when he goes on a 15-2 run, he calls timeout. But when the other team's on a 15-2 run, he doesn't call timeout. And that's where the game got away. If it was me, and you could kind of sense it after the technical foul, and I think, did they score right after the technical foul? I want to see if they scored on that technical foul. Do this. See if they scored right after the technical. Blake Butler, okay, so called for the technical foul. They actually did not. So they must have missed on the technical foul. But then they fouled Shahada Wells for 3. Not sure if that was a foul. And then Shoemate had a dunk. So all of a sudden, a 57-44 ball game is 57-49. You got to call timeout. You got to call time. And they didn't. And so it got away from them. Although the Cajuns came back. They were down 4. And Joe Charles makes a couple threes. Karen Crow Joe makes a couple of threes. They actually have the lead. Cajuns were up 72-70, and they didn't really run a play. Themis Folks just kind of dribbled it out at the top of the key and took it to the basket with 15 seconds left on the shot clock. Now, would have been about a minute or so left in the game, but he shot it way too fast and really didn't get any movement on the team. He missed a layup. I think Bob thought he was fouled. McNeese comes down, hits a 3, and the Cajuns didn't get a real good shot off at the end, although the referee called goaltending, and it clearly wasn't because the ball was a good few feet short. I thought there was going to be a foul on that, but the referee absolutely indicated goaltending, but it wasn't because the ball was well short. But nonetheless, 5 technical fouls called in the game. Love it. Will Wade called for a technical foul. Again, a very entertaining ball game, a ball game that the Cajuns should not have lost. Give credit to McNeese for coming back, but the Cajuns need to win that ball game. The Cajuns have a 13-point lead with, 11 minutes left to go. You got to win that ball game. And they sort of melted down, and I'm still not sure why they didn't call timeout in the middle of a big run like that. They did grab the lead. They did grab a lead and had the ball. So disappointing loss for the Cajuns on the basketball court. Disappointing loss for the Cajuns in the New Orleans Bowl. But, boy, both wildly entertaining ball games. Neither one was blowout, and basically both of them came down to the last play of the game. So pretty good getting my money's worth. All right, we will we'll review the ODU WKU ball game on Tuesday, and we'll start to look ahead to signing day. I saw South Alabama got some transfers in. Some people are deciding to stay. We'll see if we can do a recap of all of that. Also, I am heading to Florida to spend some time with some friends and family, but we will seem to manage to do the podcasts from the Sunshine State. So also planning on doing the Boca Bowl. So we'll go see the Orange, who can you believe what the Syracuse Orange are doing recruiting wise? I can't believe it. That's a different podcast. Lockdown Q's. But so we're actually planning on going to the Boca Bowl, Syracuse versus USF. So we will get our podcasts in, that is for sure. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in. It was a heck of a weekend. Not a great start for the Sun Belt. See if ODU can pick it up on the football field. And certainly disappointing loss for the Cajuns in McNeese, but a whale of a basketball game, that was for sure, as McNeese does win 74-72. Thanks so much for tuning in to Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. I'm your host, Dave Schultz. Have a great week, and we will talk to you again on Tuesday.